The New York Giants continue to find new ways to win, and today it was all about the run game and their victory over the Houston Texans. The final score from East Rutherford, New Jersey, Giants 24, Texans 16. Now, I mentioned the run game. Saquon Barkley feeling a lot better coming off the bye week, had a chance to heal up a little bit. His shoulder was bothering him early on this season, especially in the game against the Packers over in London. Saquon looked explosive today. He carried the ball 35 times, a career high for him. He went for 152 yards from scrimmage. And when you look at it on paper, the Texans are the lowest ranked run defense. So from the Giants' perspective, it only makes sense that they gave the ball to Barkley that many times. Jones only threw the ball 17 times. He was 13 for 17, had a really high pass rating in the 150s. Very efficient today. Brian Daboll had that. Brian Daboll mentioned that after the game. He almost couldn't believe how efficient Daniel Jones was today. And the Giants got off to a great start. On the opening possession, Daniel Jones found, I got to make sure I get this name right here because Lawrence Cager, a tight end, a lesser-known guy that just got called up. He caught the touchdown for the Giants, a tight end, got them on the board, score was 7-0. And for the Giants in the first half, they saw a familiar face out there on the field. It was Kenny Golladay, finally back from injury. And Golladay was targeted a couple times, and both times he dropped the ball and was greeted with immense boos, rightly so. The fans were fed up that this all-pro receiver that played so well in Detroit, who you signed for 4 years and $72 million, can't catch a simple, quick slant route. A route that if he had caught the ball would have led to a significant drive for the Giants. His drop ultimately led to a punt. A lot of frustration for those Giant fans going into halftime. And the halftime score, the Giants, they were up 7-3. After that opening drive, they weren't able to get much offense going in the first half. Kenny Golladay dropped a few balls. The Texans defense started to figure out the Giant offense. Now, it was a bit of a different story in the second half. Kenny Golladay was benched, and the Giants went with a bit of a different scheme. They started running the ball a lot more. As I mentioned earlier, Saquon Barkley kept getting the rock. He eventually scored a touchdown. He got in for a 2-yard run to cap off a great drive for the Giants. And the third quarter was actually rather interesting because the first 3 drives were all touchdowns. The Giants scored, the Texans scored, the Giants scored. It started to look like a shootout. Going into the fourth quarter, it was 21-10 in favor of the G-Men. And at that point, the Giants just had to play defense, and they got a number of key takeaways in this game, despite missing safety Xavier McKinney, who injured his finger on a, let's just call it a vacation during the bye week. So he'll miss significant time. But a number of guys got called up. They stepped in this week, and it was just amazing to see the Giants finding new ways to win. A number of the beat reporters around me kept saying, this team last year would have just folded in all of these situations. But what Daboll and his coaching staff have been able to do has been remarkable. Subbing in new guys, just making sure that everyone does their job. And if everyone collectively buys into that, they're going to win. And that's exactly what happened. 2 key takeaways in the red zone were really what made the game, what made the difference in today's game for the Giants, because I've mentioned this in a lot of my post-game reports, bend but don't break. The Giants bend a lot. They were down in Jacksonville and the ball went all the way down to the 1, but they don't break. They give up a lot of yards, but not a lot of points. Sounds weird, but it's been working. The Giants are now 7-2, and despite a late field goal from the Texans, an onside kick didn't do them any good. The Giants won by 8 points, which ties their largest margin of victory this year. They picked up a 20-12 victory over the Bears back in, I don't know if it was week 3 or week 4, but early on in that 3-game homestand, the Giants now matched that win total. And a little disappointing in my opinion, because I see that this game and the game against the Lions next week give the Giants a good opportunity to win big. And I think winning by double digits could go a long way for this Giants team for morale purposes. Obviously, a win is a win. But I think even though you're beating the really good teams by a small margin, you're also beating the not so good teams by a not so large margin. They did cover the spread of 5 points or 5.5, but they won by more than Vegas said that they would win by. So they win in that regard. However, the Giants still have a lot of work to do because on offense, they don't have that many weapons. Darius Slayton was the standout guy today. He made probably the play of the game. He caught a ball on the near sideline around the 40-yard line, sort of tiptoed along that sideline and then just ran straight down, beat a couple of defenders, straight to the house, touchdown Giants. It went for actually 54 yards, had to check that stat there. That was the play of the day, in my opinion, for the Giants. And it's what really gave them the momentum boost. Wan'Dale Robinson was in there, caught a couple passes. But again, Kenny Galladay, nothing again today. A lot of boos from the fans, a lot of questions to be had. But at the end of the game, as usual, I caught up with head coach Brian Daboll. Here's what he had to say about the victory today.
Today's my youngest daughter's birthday. So I was asking her what she wanted for a present the other day. And she said a win. So, give me a football with my name on it, Dad. So that's pressure, more than anything else. So I want to wish her a happy birthday. I'm going to get a win. Guys played hard, played physical, made some timely turnovers, came out in the second half, had an opening drive touchdown, stalled a couple times in the fringe. Got hit on some bigger plays in the second half, but overall, good team win. You're ready to play Detroit.
The Giants locker room, always a fun place to be, especially after a win. I've seen plenty of those this year. I caught up with Kayvon Thibodeau, the rookie out of Oregon. He talked about the attitude that he's seen in this team and why it contributes to so many wins.
We got a lot of players with chips on their shoulders. We got a lot of players that's willing to fight with their backs against the wall, and that's what we just come to do every day. We kind of bring that energy. Once we start really playing that complementary football, we're gonna, it's gonna look great.
Now the Giants will be back in action next Sunday, 1 o'clock kick. They'll be facing the Detroit Lions. Another game that on paper the Giants should be favored in, and they should win that game. A win next week will put the Giants at 8-2 as they head down to Dallas for a showdown on Thanksgiving Day. It's the primetime slot at 4:30. It's the game that you'll be watching over your relative's shoulder as you're sitting at the dinner table. It's going to be that game. It's the Fox game. It's that way every year, and hopefully the Giants can get it figured out, because if they win in Dallas, you have 10 days of rest before taking on the Washington Commanders at home on December the 5th, I believe. And at that point, you could possibly be going for your 10th win. And I think 10 wins is enough to make the playoffs. The New York Giants could very well be punching their ticket to the playoffs in the not too distant future. And I'll be there to cover it all. But from now until then, for WFUV Sports, I'm Brij Gautam.